Just outside the courtroom, Officer Trent Mallory storms forward, voice sharp enough to slice through conversation. "You! Stop right there!" His words aren't aimed at someone disruptive, but at a poised black woman standing silently near. The back, her hands folded, expression unreadable. Her name is Naomi Rivers. Her hair, thick and braided with care, seems to offend him more than her presence. A woman nearby clutches her handbag and whispers, "She doesn't belong in here." Phones tilt, eyes narrow. Mallory steps in front of Naomi, blocking her with theatrical authority. "Where's your clearance badge? You can't be back here." Naomi doesn't blink. "You might want to double-check your assumptions." As he shoves past her shoulder to snatch her small purse, a silver emblem slips out, unnoticed. But a young clerk across the room stares, eyes widening. She knows that symbol, but Officer Mallory doesn't. Not yet. If you believe no one should be judged by their appearance, especially by those in power, hit the like button now and subscribe. Type "justice" in the comments and tell us where you're watching from. This story delivers the most powerful instant karma you'll see all year. The ending will leave you breathless. Naomi Rivers didn't come from marble floors or polished courtrooms. She came from a rusted town in Alabama, where the benches were warped and the judges barely looked up. Her mother mopped courtroom aisles after hearings, her shoes wet with justice that rarely ran in their direction. Naomi used to sit in the back, coloring between lines she'd one day rewrite. She learned early that power didn't always wear a badge, it sometimes wore a grin. By 25, Naomi was drafting cultural bias audits for statewide agencies. By 30, she'd served as silent counsel for a Senate ethics panel. She was the ghost behind reform, rarely mentioned, never credited. And that was fine. She wasn't chasing applause. She was watching for cracks. In law school, a classmate once yanked her paper off a desk and laughed. "You write like a judge," he sneered. "Too bad you'll never be one." That same classmate now gives keynote speeches. Naomi? She reads transcripts of his rulings for patterns of prejudice. Now she walks without title, no press release, no lanyard, just a navy blouse and the weight of her own memory. She came not to correct, but to observe correction's absence. The courtroom stinks of fake reform. A bailiff squints at her. "You, with one of the defendants?" She doesn't blink. "Procedural review," she says, letting the ambiguity sit like fog. He nods and walks off, uneasy. She didn't lie. She didn't need to. Then enters Officer Trent Mallory. His smile is tight, his authority performative. He waves at a younger white woman fumbling her documents. "We'll take care of you," he says with polished kindness. As he turns, he steps backward, shoulder, checking Naomi and sending her folder to the floor. Deliberate, dismissive. He smirks. "Oops." Naomi kneels, collects the folder one page at a time, and rises slowly. No comment, no escalation, but behind her silence, the clock has already started ticking. Have you ever felt misjudged before people even knew who you were? Tell us in the comments, and don't forget to like and subscribe. The doors hadn't even closed before the tension shifted. Officer Trent Mallory stood posted by the gallery rail like he owned it, chest puffed, eyes scanning for anything out of order. But what he really meant was anyone out of place. He leaned toward the deputy beside him, chuckled under his breath, and tilted his chin toward Naomi. "They're always the ones with an attitude. Think rules don't apply to them." Naomi, seated 3 rows from the front, unfolded a small notebook. The section she'd chosen was marked for legal observers, quiet, formal, unobtrusive. But Mallory saw none of that. Only a woman sitting, somewhere she wasn't supposed to. He stormed down the aisle. "Ma'am, that's a restricted section. Badged observers only. Show your credentials or move." Naomi's eyes met his, calm, direct. "I have legal clearance." He smiled without humor. "Funny, you're not on my list." And without warning, he reached down and yanked her up by the wrist. Hard. The rows around them froze. His grip wasn't protocol. It was punishment. Naomi didn't wince, didn't speak. She simply straightened, brushing her sleeve in one deliberate motion. No one noticed, except a young man across the aisle. He caught the flick of her wrist. A faint red light blinked from her smart band. He didn't know what it meant, but he knew this wasn't just about seating. Phones shifted. A woman 2 rows back angled her camera. A clerk at the back turned away, adjusting files that didn't need sorting. No one stopped it, but they were watching. "She's making a scene," a suited man whispered to his colleague. "Typical." Mallory now placed a hand on her shoulder and shoved her toward the aisle. "Out, now, you're not cleared. End of discussion." This wasn't security protocol. It was personal theater. A young intern, barely 20, rose halfway from her bench. "Is that really necessary?" she asked, voice small. Mallory didn't turn. "Mind your station." She sat, cheeks flushed, but her phone stayed recording. Naomi adjusted her bag, smoothed her collar, and looked him straight in the eye. "You might want to double-check what you're escalating." Mallory's smirk faltered, and for the first time all morning, the room held its breath. What would you do if someone challenged you publicly based only on assumption? Drop your response in the comments. That's it. You're done, Officer Trent Mallory snapped, eyes narrowing as he stormed toward Naomi. The crowd had barely taken their seats. The judge hadn't even entered. But Mallory didn't care. He grabbed Naomi's arm and yanked her into the hallway with sharp, performative aggression. Her leather bag slipped from her shoulder, bursting open on the tiled floor. Documents spilled, like dominoes, sliding under chairs against feet. Gasps broke from the gallery. "You were warned," Mallory spat, pointing in her face. "Don't test me." The courtroom fell still. Conversations died mid-sentence. A junior prosecutor halfway through a sip of coffee paused, cup hovering in the air. All eyes turned to the hallway doors, to the woman now kneeling, collecting. Her scattered papers in composed silence. Naomi didn't tremble. She didn't look up in panic. Instead, she adjusted the corner of a bent folder, tucked loose papers into it, stood, and looked Mallory directly in the eye. "I've broken no rule," she said, voice level, cool, "and I'm not leaving." She reached inside her coat and tapped the lining softly. To anyone else, it looked like brushing off lint, but a single red light blinked beneath her sleeve, recording, silent, unseen. Across the aisle, a man in a beige blazer leaned toward a colleague. "Wait, I know her face. Isn't she some activist? A speaker, maybe?" The whisper floated like static, a misread. But it stuck. Mallory's voice rose again as he grabbed her wrist for a second time, dragging her back toward the corridor. "You're playing a dangerous game," he growled. "Step out of line again, I dare you." Some onlookers muttered, "She's resisting." Others shifted uneasily. "That was excessive." "Who is she, really?" Tension fractured the room. Naomi didn't budge. She planted her feet and went still, centered like stone. Mallory scowled, but for the first time, doubt cracked through his performance. Elise, the young court reporter, passed close. Her hand brushed Naomi's, a small sticky note pressed into her palm. In pencil, it read, "I'm watching." Naomi reached into her pocket, withdrew a sleek black pen, and set it beside her folder on the table. Harmless at first glance, unless you knew that pen was issued only to federal judiciary oversight officials. In the back, a senior legal assistant's face changed. He recognized it, and he froze. A soft buzz vibrated at Naomi's wrist. She slipped a hand discreetly into her coat. A coded message blinked across her screen. "Room tapped, feed active, continue." Across the room, a man in tortoiseshell. Glasses nodded once, then turned away. "She's doing this for attention," a defense attorney scoffed, loud enough for others to hear. Nervous laughter followed, but it didn't land the same. Not anymore. Two staffers murmured, "We've had enough drama for one day." A bailiff offered water to every seated official, skipping Naomi entirely. Naomi opened her bag, slow, measured. She reached for a folded document. Mallory slammed his palm against the strap. "Stop. Right now. Everything paused. Elise's fingers hovered over her keyboard. The crowd leaned in, frozen. From the corner, a clerk cleared her throat. "Ma'am, would you like me to speak to someone?" Naomi gave her a single nod. No words, but the shift had begun. Mallory barked again. "Mind your business." His voice cracked this time. The control was slipping, and he knew it. Across the room, court aides continued handing out documents and refreshments to everyone except Naomi. It wasn't an oversight. It was a message. And everyone saw it. What would you do if you were in Naomi's shoes? Would you fight back? Or stay calm and let the truth reveal itself? Tell us in the comments. Hit like and subscribe. Naomi stood at the edge of the courtroom, composed, still, a woman anchored in the middle of a storm. But Trent Mallory, flushed with frustration, came charging back. He didn't speak at first. He didn't have to. With a vicious elbow, he slammed into her side as he passed, hard, enough to knock her into the wood rail. She caught herself barely on the back of a chair. A sharp inhale came from someone nearby. Mallory didn't offer an apology, just venom. "She's been disruptive from the start," he barked, loud enough for the gallery. "She doesn't even belong here." The judge hadn't entered, but the room already felt like a trial. A woman in a red jacket nodded with uncertainty. "Why is she even allowed to stay?" she murmured. Naomi straightened. She adjusted nothing but her posture. "All I've ever asked for is fairness." Soft, centered, unignorable. A court reporter pressed record on her backup mic. Then Naomi turned, slowly, toward the exit. Whispers rose. People assumed she'd given up. 5 steps. She stopped, turned, and walked back, right to the center of the room. She didn't say a word. Then came the final break. "Don't ignore me," Mallory snapped, his voice cracking. He lunged, slapping a folder. From her hands, papers exploded into the air. Gasps erupted. "That crossed a line," someone in the gallery said aloud. Naomi didn't blink. "You just made a mistake," she said coldly. "A public one." What do you think Naomi should do next? Should she stay quiet or let the truth shake the room? Let us know in the comments. Also, hit like and subscribe right now. Naomi stood in the exact same spot where Mallory had knocked her folder from her hands, papers still scattered like shattered glass around her feet. But this time she didn't crouch to clean it. Not immediately. She simply stood, looking straight ahead. Her voice, when it came, was low, measured. "I've tolerated enough." No anger, no trembling, no pitch to her voice. Just words that cut like glass. Mallory opened his mouth, ready to regain control, but it faltered before it left his throat. "You're the one making this complicated," he snapped, a beat too late. He spun toward the gallery, hoping for backup. A nod, a murmur, something. But silence answered him. Eyes began to drift, not toward him, but toward her. The same courtroom that once saw Naomi as a disruption now looked at her like a center of gravity. She hadn't raised her voice. She hadn't made a scene. She just stood still. And in that stillness, their assumptions collapsed. Naomi slowly knelt, not to retreat, but to reclaim. She gathered her documents with care, then slid a sleek black envelope from beneath the folder and placed it on the table beside her seat. Unmarked, glossy, heavy. A legal advisor seated 3 rows back inhaled sharply through his nose. He didn't say a word, but he knew what that envelope was, and more importantly, who typically carried them. Naomi turned slightly to the side of the courtroom where a quiet intern stood holding a stack of unused evidence labels. "Would you mind handing this to the clerk?" she asked gently. The intern blinked, then nodded. She walked, each step watched, not by Naomi, by Mallory. "What is that?" he barked, louder than he meant to. Naomi tilted her head, serene. "You're awfully curious about things that aren't your concern." Mallory's throat tightened. His eyes shifted from Naomi to the gallery. He could feel it. The crowd wasn't with him anymore. A man in the third row leaned forward. "Want me to document the rest?" he whispered. Naomi gave a single nod. The man lifted his phone, pressed record, and centered it on the scene. Naomi turned to the courtroom. "This was never about rules," she said calmly. "It's about how you treat people when no one's watching." Someone in the back murmured, "That's the truth." Another nodded slowly. Mallory stepped back. His mouth opened to retort, but he spoke too loud, too late, and too honest. "People like that don't belong in our system anyway," he muttered under his breath. But not under the room's radar. A nearby mic perched on the judge's desk caught every word. So did 3 phones, 1 live stream, and at least 4 stunned faces. Silence, true silence. Even the clerk froze mid-stamp, hand hovering over the docket. The air stopped moving. Naomi adjusted the pin on her lapel, a small brushed metal insignia barely larger than a thumbnail. It caught a thread of courtroom light. Most dismissed it as jewelry. But the man from earlier? His jaw dropped. He leaned toward the person beside him and whispered, "That's a federal clearance badge. She's not a guest. She's—" His voice trailed off. Naomi turned her gaze to Mallory, voice quiet, surgical. "You overlooked one thing," she said. Her eyes didn't flinch. "Everything you've done today is being recorded, internally and externally." Mallory's pupils dilated. His posture changed, not with defense, but realization. He didn't respond, because he finally understood. The courtroom wasn't his stage anymore. It was his file. What would you do in this situation? Would you stay calm, speak up, or walk away? Comment your thoughts below, and hit like and subscribe if this moment hit home. The courtroom turned electric. Conversations died mid-word. Papers paused in mid-air. A clerk slowly lowered his coffee, his eyes locked on Naomi. Across the room, a security officer straightened, not in preparation, but in recognition. Behind the defense table, a man in plain clothes adjusted his stance and moved into position. The court videographer noticed and quietly zoomed in. Naomi reached into her leather bag and removed a black rectangular device, sleek, silent. She placed it face down on the polished table. A soft pulse glowed beneath it. Red, steady. Mallory took a step forward, tension rising. "What are you doing?" His voice cracked, uneven, small. Naomi didn't look at him. She faced the room and said calmly, "You'll understand soon enough. If you think the Officer Trent Mallory reaction was uncalled for, hit that like button. And don't forget to subscribe for more justice stories like this." "She's too calm for this to be nothing," a man in the back whispered, leaning toward his wife. "You don't think—" The question dangled mid-air, unfinished. Suspicion had replaced certainty. At the front of the courtroom, Elise, still and silent, rose from her chair. In her hands, she held a folded document Naomi had discreetly passed earlier. She didn't speak. She didn't make a show of it. She simply walked forward, placed it on the judge's bench, and stepped back like it was a sacred offering. The judge, freshly entered, paused. He unfolded the document. 1 beat, 2. Then his eyes widened. Simultaneously, Naomi reached across the table and pressed a small, recessed button on the black device she'd laid down earlier. Behind her, the projection screen flickered to life. A video played, not of her, but of Mallory, grainy, raw. Mallory in another courthouse, same uniform, same tone, shoving a young man. "Don't test me," he growled on the screen. A racial slur followed. Then laughter, unfiltered, undeniable. Gasps erupted. Phones flew up. Nobody smirked now. Then, quiet footsteps. 2 individuals entered the courtroom from a rear chamber. Navy suits, composed. No introduction needed. One wore a federal badge clipped to her collar. She scanned the room, locked eyes with Naomi, and nodded once. "This woman is not a detainee," the lead official announced to the stunned courtroom. "She is Judge Naomi Rivers, Federal Oversight Counsel and Acting Monitor for Courtroom. Conduct under Judicial Review Statute 49B. Silence didn't return. It collapsed. "That's why she looked familiar," someone in the gallery whispered. "I saw her on that ethics panel. C-SPAN." Naomi didn't gloat. She stood with the same calm she'd carried since the first insult. "I've been embedded for 3 weeks," she said, observing racial and procedural misconduct under a federal appointment. "And what I witnessed today wasn't an isolated incident. It was a pattern." Mallory took a step back. "I didn't know. I didn't realize." But no one answered. Because he never asked. The federal lead turned to him. "Effective immediately. Courtroom protocol is suspended pending investigation." She held her badge firm. "Your access is revoked. Stand down." Naomi stepped aside, not in defeat, but in full command. She didn't need to speak anymore. The system would. 2 more agents entered, carrying sealed envelopes and thumb drives. This wasn't damage control. This was execution. Planned, coordinated, timed. Naomi turned back to Mallory one last time. "You never asked who I was," she said. "You assumed and acted on it." A slow ripple of nods moved through the courtroom. Then one single clap. Then silence again, but this time it was reverence. "You chose bias," Naomi added. "You rejected truth. That's what you'll answer for." Mallory turned, searching for support. The bailiff who once stood beside him looked away. No one followed. He stood alone, sweating, surrounded, and small. He made a subtle move toward the exit. A hopeful shuffle. "Remain where you are," the federal lead snapped, stepping forward. "You are now under internal federal review." Mallory froze. "Your position is terminated," she added, "effective immediately." A second official approached. "You'll now report to the Office of Civil Rights Enforcement." Mallory's complexion drained. He opened his mouth. "This wasn't personal," he muttered, barely audible. Naomi turned. "It became personal. The moment you made it public." She faced the gallery. "To those who stayed silent but stayed aware, thank you. You saw. And that's enough." Elise, still seated, met Naomi's eyes. A single nod passed between them. Not for performance. Just recognition. As Naomi turned to leave, the hallway screen lit up behind her. Judge Naomi Rivers, Federal Oversight and Judicial Ethics Division. A woman who once scoffed at Naomi now lowered her head. Every eye followed her to the exit. And, in that moment, everyone finally understood who had been sitting in silence all along. Do you think the officer Trent Mallory deserves forgiveness or should face the full consequences? Let us know in the comments. And if this story moved you, hit like and subscribe for more powerful justice stories like this. Naomi was almost at the exit when a soft voice reached her. It was the court intern, the one who hesitated to speak. "I've never seen someone win without shouting," she said. Naomi paused, then smiled faintly. "It's not the volume," she replied. "It's the truth that stays." By sundown, courtroom footage had gone viral. Not because it was loud, but because it was precise, measured, unshakable. A trending comment read, "This is how you dismantle a system, with stillness that makes the walls echo." When asked for a statement, Naomi offered only this: "Power isn't noise, it's knowing when not to flinch." Later that week, she walked into a local school where she'd once been turned away. This time, the receptionist stood up and smiled. "Welcome back, Judge Rivers." In another courtroom, stripped of his uniform and rank, Trent Mallory sat quietly in the gallery. No badge, just silence. But he didn't leave. He stayed. And he listened. That night, Naomi opened a sealed folder stamped, Phase 2, National Oversight Expansion. She didn't grin. She didn't gloat. She just whispered, "Legacy isn't what they hear you say. It's what they remember. When you leave the room, If you loved this story, don't forget to like, subscribe, and share it with someone who needs to be reminded that dignity is for everyone, not just the powerful. And in the comments, tell us, should Mallory be forgiven or should he face full consequences? Let us know below.